Hello, I'm Connor Jones. This is another trial run through for my presentation. Here is my work ID. Connor Jones. It's me. I don't have a U&G ID because they never gave me one. Wallet ID, goatee, beard, same guy. Promise you. Nice to meet you. Okay, so retrograde and renovation for retired residents by Connor Jones. My prompt was about addressing the housing issues that are going to be arising as more of the boomer generation and more of Gen X slowly starts to integrate into assisted living, elderly areas, and housing issues that we may have. I also asked what are creative ideas that I could address to increase quality of life. So, here we go. The first thing I did was I asked the 5 W's, which were who, what, where, when, and why. Who is the boomer generation and younger? Boomer generation being the primary target, and each younger generation being the ones that have to burden a certain area of responsibility, and those responsibilities are different depending on which cohort you're part of. What is the growing generational gaps and isolation of elderly individuals? In a sense, it's a bit of dehumanization, which needs to be addressed. Where this primarily focuses on lower income areas, lower income individuals, those that can't afford good primary living, aren't in healthiest of conditions, and are on the much later stages of their life. When this is an address that needs to be addressed now. We have a terrible habit of postponing issues for the next generation people, and that is something that is a fault I see of ours, and we need to normalize being proactive on our issues and getting forward. Why? These are some of the main issues that I'm listing off as to why we're in this situation. Growing technological responsibilities, lack of financial backing, underestimation of life expectancy, and greater variability of cultural norms. Hello, Quinn. Okay, so this is the timeline labeling the people who I'm talking about in their different age demographics, from very little of the silent generation, boomers, Gen X, millennials, and then Gen Z. The black spacings here are those individuals that are at the end of generations, but also at the beginning of the next generation, which is a very interesting / difficult position to be in, because you have the wisdom of the previous generation and you're aware of more archaic methods, but you also have the knowledge of understanding and living with the younger versions of your timeline. So first I want to talk about technological changes. It is in no way boomer individuals' faults for not having the foresight of what is to come and what is to be of our country and what is to be normal of our society. Some of the social changes I just wanted to point out were cell phones, social media, and like video lectures like Zoom and Skype and such like that. As we mentioned in the book, this virtual interaction is not a perfect one-for-one supplement for the real thing, for real physical interaction, but it does bring about benefits, and some communication is better than none. You know, anything's better than zero. Medically, we have skyrocketed through. Some of these just basic, not basic, but advancements are like an electric stair climber for those that are vertically challenged, a pacemaker for an individual's heart, or hearing aids for quality of life. These are all things that have prolonged our ability to sustain ourselves and made our quality of life better, thus expanding our life expectancy. Here is a display of the life expectancy from the 1960s to about 2018. From reading this chart, thing I wanted to point out is that you need to understand that certain individuals within the boomer generation, there's no way they could have been prepared for everything that is going on right now and couldn't have expected anything going on. They are living, I say, up to 8 years beyond their original expectation, some much longer. You don't know how long you're going to live, but it is going up, and we need to be more prepared for that as we move forward. To be more prepared for that, we need financial freedom. For this, I want to just talk about the median income of what individuals are going through. The cost of living has changed drastically over the decades. Has changed drastically over the decades. Here I've listed from 1984, it was about 52K. In 2019, it's about 68K. You can adjust for inflation, you can adjust for higher literacy rates, no matter what it may be. Scaling wise, it's difficult to have an individual who's making like, God, what, 12 grand a year from the boomer generation, and scaling inflation wise to be prepared for a time like this. I even listed the cost of retirement in Georgia in 2021. Cost of living, then cost of living with Social Security, which is a program which will be ending soon. I'll be addressing that later. And this is the estimated needed amount of savings to be handled in that situation. So this scaling just doesn't match up whatsoever. So here was my suggestion as a way to reroute this. This is my bold policy adaptation. The expansion of Medicare and Medicaid. Easier accessibility to this federal program by lowering the requirements and adding additional funds to the reservoir. So essentially what the idea is that you fund better Medicare and Medicaid, which provides for now, by essentially eliminating and taking all the taxation funds from Social Security. You essentially eliminate Social Security as a whole. Now, I understand from the book that it's up to like 11% of elderly individuals that their primary and only source of income is Social Security. You asked for creative ideas, not ideas that would benefit all. I understand that with this type of policy, you would be cutting off about the next probably 10 years of elderly individuals' income to supplement for later generations. And the idea that in normalizing this level of care and acceptance. This is just a policy idea, just providing it. Okay, next is culturally, I want to talk about differences between the Western Hemisphere and the Eastern Hemisphere, which gets to the primary idea of why I wanted to do this, which was elderly integration of elderly individuals into the primary household. The idea of having elderly individuals move back into the middle-aged adults' household. So here I have listed the medium ages of households between Western Hemisphere and Eastern Hemisphere. Males on the left, and then slash, and then right is females, medium age. Scaling down numerically, Canada, USA, Brazil, Mexico, and then Eastern is Japan, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Russia. The Eastern Hemisphere majorly has a much larger medium house income age. How'd you get in the closet? I theorized over several of the issues on this and did a little bit of research, and I came up with a pyramid to use as a predictor for why these things are working the way they are, the reason these numbers are the way they are. So use this geographical map to help explain through these. There's a list of 4 things that are large variant determinants. And I'll start with the first one, which is most impactful, the base of the pyramid, which is overall development of your country. Depending on if you're in a first world, second world, or third world country, is a big determinant factor of how an estimate of how far you're going to go out the gate. If you're in a much more underdeveloped country, you're not going to get far. I'm sorry. Your life expectancy might be 50 if you're lucky. This is common in areas like Africa, some of South America. 60s and 70s is pretty common for the Middle East. So the next level up is crime/homicide rate. The division of law and order versus crime rate and punishment is the secondary big factor of what is going to determine if you're going to live long enough. Poverty induces crime. Like, the poorer you are, which the development of your country, more crime there's going to be. The more crime there is, the lower your expectancy rate. Second to top is literacy rate. The more educated your individuals are within your community, the higher probability they have of making positive decisions and changes towards everlasting life. Not everlasting, but the longevity of their life. Basically, the more educated you are, the better chance you have of living a longer life. And at the very top of the pyramid is a sweet spot for elderly individuals, but is not necessarily the main breaking point, which is cultural normatives. By this, I'm referring to how normal is it to have the elderly be a part of your daily routine? How does your culture perceive the elderly? For this reference, I refer back to the readings in the Italian island, or whatever it may be, where the place where like men and women had equal life expectancy rates. I remember in one of the discussion posts we had to do or something like that, the girl was talking about how it was such a privilege. It's not a burden at all for her to interact with her grandpa. It's a privilege for her to be able to sit and talk and gain that wisdom, be able to interact. It's a very respectable point of view, and I think it's one we could learn a lot from. So, last part of the prompt was alternative solutions for elderly care. I have one main solution that I saw this and I thought this was fantastic. Excuse me. Integrated daycare into senior care, meaning that at elderly nursing homes or elder care facilities, you integrate toddler daycares into them. This originated at St. Joseph's Home for Aged and Hospice back in the UK in 2018, and in 2019 it was brought over into certain facilities within the US, and it's been growing ever since. So, why is this a good thing? So, for one, cognitively, senior citizens get to practice narrowing that generational gap. Grandparents love grandchildren. They love interacting with them. It's that physical action. They don't have to do the virtualness. They don't have to supplement it. They get it. Two, they get to convey their wisdom and their knowledge and their experience onto the younger generation. Three, there's a forced interaction between senior citizens, middle-aged adults, and the toddlers or younglings. Because the middle-aged adults have to drop off their kids and bring them up, and remains that connection between senior citizens as well. Four, toddlers get to learn. It's good for them to have that interaction with their grandparents. It's healthy. It's almost a requirement for them. It's living proof that, hey, you can develop and this is good for you. Here's what I learned. Let's convey this information. It bridges that general gap and normalizes having a deep relationship with the elderly. So, in summary, this presentation was used in hopes of encouraging, normalizing elderly interactions and getting elderly into the primary household. That information gap and bridging that generational gap is so vitally important. We have so much to learn about the collective community as a whole, rather than being so hyper-dependent on the individual and the individualistic ways of America. It's like that old saying, It takes a village to raise an idiot. Well, we're idiots for dropping the village. You know, normalize this interaction. Stay active, be proactive, and start caring. So, integrate the elderly. And these are my citations. So, all right, that's my presentation. Thank you.